We're right in the middle of this segment on human factors. And we're going to have a series of 4 talks here on the idea of humanism in architecture. Humanism is a larger philosophy, but there's a very clear application of humanism to architecture. And this is really focusing on how architecture becomes just a crucible for life. It really is integrally connected to the way we live, how we live, our own self-actualization as played out in a physical environment. The dictionary definition for humanism is a doctrine or attitude centered on human interest or values, a philosophy that asserts the dignity and worth of mankind and the capacity for self-realization through reason. So really there are 4 parts to that definition I want us to focus on. The first is that it is centered on human interests or values. This is making architecture that is just absolutely centered on human beings and their interests and their values. The second thing is that it asserts the dignity and worth of mankind, that it elevates mankind, it respects mankind. And that means everybody, not just a few people, but to really, it addresses itself widely to all of mankind. Then the third element is that it centers on the capacity for self-realization that human beings have. It optimizes our ability to become our best selves and to realize our potential. So it centers on self-realization. And then the fourth element is it does that through reason. It does it in a way that emphasizes logic and analysis and reason and thoughtfulness. So all of these are very important in this notion of humanism in architecture. So if we think of how that definition of humanism relates to just the everyday world around us, how does the everyday world center on human interests and values? How does it help us in self-actualization? How does it reflect really who we are as dignified individual human beings? And maybe we could look at 2 everyday objects as examples of that. One of those might be your just common everyday wine bottle. That is often cited as an example of a humanistic design. Its shape and its form has everything to do with the human body. The size of that, the diameter of that bottle has to do with the shape of my hand and how it grasps and just the right size so that I can hold it securely and not have it slip too easily. Not be so big that I can't really grasp it easily. And then just the shape of it and the weight of it and the size of it is such that I can easily lift it and pour it. And that long neck of a wine bottle means that I can pour it more easily. It focuses that pour as opposed to if it were just the same width as the bottom of the bottle. And the wine bottle concentrates more glass at the very base of the wine bottle so that it sits very stable on a table. It doesn't tip easily. So everything about the design of that is this just kind of simple, doing what it needs to do, help us do what we need to do, reflect our body, our scale, our hand, and that makes it a very humanistic object. Another example might be something like blue jeans. And I'm actually going to say there are 5 characteristics here that we might start looking out for in these humanistic objects that blue jeans have in spades. So the first thing is blue jeans are just something we all wear. I mean, probably 60, 70% of you listening to this are freaking wearing blue jeans right at the moment. And they've become a kind of ubiquitous piece of clothing really now all over the world. And they are an egalitarian kind of piece of clothing. Rich people wear blue jeans, poor people wear blue jeans, old people wear blue jeans, kids wear blue jeans. They're kind of for every person. So in that way, they're extremely humanistic. But they have 5 characteristics I want us to focus on in particular. The first is humanistic objects are often made of very plain materials. In order to be accessible to everyone, they need to be out of simple, plain materials. And blue jeans are made out of denim. It's not an expensive fabric. It's ubiquitous. It's made out of cotton, a very common source of fabrics. So it's just an everyday plain material. And that's often the case with humanistic objects. They're made of everyday plain materials. The second thing is they often have very simple but very straightforward construction. And that's true of blue jeans. When we seam the edges of a blue jean, we often run one row of thread that actually puts the 2 pieces of fabric together. Then they flip that over and seam it a second time to make what's called a flat-felled seam. And that seam is more durable. So that's really simple but really durable construction. Good old-fashioned Levi's even have the little rivets, the little metal rivets, that at points where there's particular stress, there's reinforcement of that. So the construction is simple, strong, straightforward. So again, blue jeans have that kind of humanistic quality. A third thing is we're often looking for humanistic things to be comfortable so that they work well with our bodies. And that certainly is true of blue jeans. They flex easily, they're soft, you don't have to worry about them wrinkling so much. They're comfortable clothes. The fourth thing is we're looking for in humanistic objects real practicality. Does it last a long time? Is it economical? Is it practical? And that certainly is true of blue jeans. They're durable, they last forever, relatively inexpensive, so they're economical. And then the fifth thing is often humanistic objects, we want them not to be pretentious. We want them to have an absence of pretension so that they're more egalitarian. They're more something that anybody could access. And that's true of blue jeans. Now, you can get ornamental and pretentious blue jeans, but for the most part, good old Levi's, they're just unpretentious things. So we're going to be looking, as we look at any kind of humanistic object, in particular the architectural objects today, in terms of those 5 characteristics. Is it simple materials? Is it straightforward construction? Is it comfortable? Is it practical? And is it absent of pretension or showiness of any sort? So with that kind of notion of what humanism is, let's just relate that for a minute back to a larger philosophy, because this is a value in architecture. So the notion of humanism has a long tradition in philosophy, goes back to Johann Wolfgang Goethe in Germany or David Hume in England. It's a very much an American philosophy. In the 19th century, people like Henry David Thoreau or Ralph Waldo Emerson, their philosophy was very much in line with this notion of humanism, elevating everybody together. And I think Henry David Thoreau's gesture of moving out of his very comfortable life in a socially prominent family in Boston to say, you know something, I'm going to look for something more fundamental, maybe more humanistic here. And he moves to Walden Pond and establishes this much more simple life that would have had those characteristics of plain materials, simple construction, comfort, practicality, lack of pretension. It's really a manifestation of this long-standing philosophy of humanism. So how might that play out in some design objects we might look at. So the first thing I want us to look at is a couple of pieces of furniture here. And on the left, I would say that is not a very humanistic object. On the right, I would say that's a very humanistic object. Let's walk through those criteria. So this is actually a highboy. It's a French design. It was done in the 19th century. And by the way, I'm not knocking it. It's kind of a badass piece of furniture. Definitely a conversation piece if you had it in your house. But it is definitely not humanistic design. It's actually not very practical at all. You can see these drawers way up here. The whole thing's about 7 feet tall. About 6 feet up here, there are drawers. What the heck can you do with a drawer up there? You can't see into it. If I put my socks in there, I have to braille to figure out, is that the pink pair or the brown pair? Very, very awkward place for drawers. It even is kind of hard to pull drawers out like this, as opposed to pulling drawers out with the action of your body and the weight of your body, giving that a little more heft. So these drawers work pretty well. Those drawers are freaking ridiculous, completely impractical. The pulls on these drawers, the little wires, extremely uncomfortable. You loop your finger in there, you pull, it cuts across your finger, not comfortable at all. It obviously is not plain materials. This is beautifully inlaid exotic woods through here, very fancy materials. It's definitely not simple construction. It's got all kinds of crazy shapes and forms that are made out of this wood. There's nothing practical about those little funny urns that are sitting around, or what the heck is a seashell doing here? These legs that look like a lion's feet. I mean, all of those may be fine as conversation piece or as elements of form, but definitely not humanistic design. On the other hand, if we look at a very similar piece of furniture here, about the same scale and much the same function, this is very humanistic. Those upper levels are shelves, not drawers, where you can, and they're relatively not very deep shelves, so you can put things in there and you can see them very easily and access them very easily, and then shut them with cabinet doors like that. Then there's another set of shelves through here that have all of your writing utensils and materials, and their closure is a cabinet door that folds up like that, so that when it's closed, it conceals all of that. But when it's open, it becomes a desk surface and is used in conjunction with all of those little cubbies for your writing materials. The bottom, this little lip that makes it a little deeper, that's what supports the desk there. That means the drawers are deeper, which they want to be, and then you're able to pull them out using the leverage of your body to get access now and to be able to see into that drawer space down there. Everything about this, simple materials, just straightforward wood, very simple construction, cutting it into boards and assembling it at right angles, makes perfect sense. Very practical, even sort of double functioning, both a desk and a highboy there. Very comfortable sitting here. This is all the right dimensions. Comfortable to pull the drawer out here. Comfortable to store your other kinds of books and accoutrements up here. And absolutely absent of any pretension or ornament. It's just serviceable. It's just there to help you with self-actualization, help you do what you want to do. That's the whole point of the piece. A couple of other furniture pieces here. This one on the right that we just looked at is a shaker piece from the 19th century, American shaker piece. This one on the left is a rocking chair. That's an American shaker piece. And even that kind of rocking action, that's something that has a kind of rhythm built into it, that our heartbeat and the rhythm that's there. There's something very comforting about rocking. You rock a baby to sleep, human beings respond to that. So the rocking chair is a very sort of humanistic gesture for a chair. This one is an English chair from the 19th century. This one is just, oh my God, badass, gorgeous humanistic design. Very, very simple and unpretentious, but also really gracious and beautiful design. So the legs splay like this at the back a little bit. That makes it sturdy, have a wider base than it has above. Those legs are a little fatter. That's where the real weight of your body goes. Your torso is here, and that weight is going on those back legs. And those back legs just acknowledge, that's my job here. I'm supporting this human being like that. The front legs are different from the back legs because their role is different. They actually have a little thickening here where they have to carry the seat, and that joint gets to be thicker because more stress is being put there. There are rails that connect all four legs so they work together and they don't get tippy or they don't splay. So that's very practical, just construction of that chair. If you look at the seat, your butt sitting on a chair for a long period of time can get kind of uncomfortable, all the weights being placed on your butt. So instead of having a hard surface like wood there, this chair has a softer surface, which is woven sisal, a kind of fiber that's woven together. It is concave to receive your butt, which is convex. So that shape reflects the shape of your body right there. It's softer, it breathes a little bit. All of that to acknowledge that's got a different role than other parts of the chair. The back is high, so it can support your head if you lean it back. The arms, you can't see this completely in this view, but those arms splay out a little bit like that, because when you sit, your elbows splay out like that, and then your wrists and hands come in, and these come in, and then it's rounded at the end, like your hand is rounded when it sits on that arm. Everything about this chair is humanistic. Simple materials, beautifully straightforward construction, wonderfully comfortable, really worried about the comfort of your body in every way, shape, material, and so on. Very practical, sturdy, stout, last forever. And a real absence of any pretension or ornament. This is not telling you, man, I am a rich person's chair. This is a fancy, badass chair. It's just beautiful because it is so simple and so serviceable. Now, these shakers that I was talking about a minute ago that did that very straightforward humanistic highboy and also did that little rocking chair. These were very interesting people. They were very humanistic in their values in all regards. They were a community that was dedicated to doing good for people. So in the 19th century in New England, they pretty much didn't need orphanages because the Shakers took it on themselves to take care of orphaned kids. So if a child's parents had died or were unable to take care of them, it was just assumed, everyone knew, you just take that child to the Shakers, and they will not only take care of the child, they will embrace that child as if it were their own family and love and nurture that child just as if it were their own. So they cared deeply about other human beings. They really respected the dignity and worth of mankind. They believed in the self-actualization of any human being, in my family, out of my family, any kind of person. So they had that deeply embedded in their culture and their religion. And then when they began to make things like that highboy or make things like that rocking chair, all those values get incorporated. Now, there's a wonderful little village in New Hampshire called Canterbury Village. It was a Shaker community from the 18th and 19th century. And it is so embedded with these values of humanism. Just pretty much everything in the buildings, the furniture, the grounds, everything just really expresses how much they respected the dignity and worth of mankind. So The buildings are made out of very simple and very straightforward materials. New England would have been covered with forests in the 19th century. And if you wanted to farm the land, the first thing you had to do was you had to cut down the forest. So when you cut down the forest, you got a lot of trees. The trees were pretty good for timber. So basically, their houses were made out of wood. Very simple materials. These wooden houses with wooden clapboards and wooden shingles on the roof. But at the bottom, where the house would meet the ground, the wood wouldn't be appropriate because there's moisture in the ground, and moisture next to the wood would cause the wood to rot, and so it wouldn't hold up very well. But also in New England, there's lots of rocks right below the soil, and if you're going to farm land, and they were agricultural people, that would mean that they needed to take those rocks out of the soil so that they could farm it. So they take the rocks out and they begin to build the base of the buildings out of rock or stone. And then on top of that, when they've gone out of the moisture sufficiently, then they begin to make it out of wood. So simple materials, very straightforward construction. And really the only kind of ornament in that is you occasionally get like a corner board or a trim piece. But really, other than that, very, very simple, straightforward construction. Inside, they had big open rooms inside like that. That would have been a living room. This is more like a bedroom area. There's a storage unit here, very practical. Storage spaces tucked in everywhere. But this kind of expresses the kind of life they lived there. They did agriculture, but they also did a bit of manufacturing. So especially the women were involved in making clothing. And in particular, they were famous for a kind of sweater that was produced for generations in the Shaker community. It became the kind of quintessential New England heavy wool sweater. And again, that sweater had all of these humanistic values in it. It was just a classic piece of accoutrement and of clothing in the 19th and well into the 20th century. But they would have these big tables where they would lay out their materials for cutting and for assembling these things. And those very same tables that might be used during the day as work tables would then become available with their kitchen and be able to use that for preparing food or for serving food at the end of the day with their family. So this would have been an area where they're doing their work and they're also doing domestic kinds of things. It's a family space and it's a workspace too. Even these incredibly practical things like if you want to clean the floor, these lightweight pieces of furniture, you could just pick them up, flip them over, hang them on pegs there, and then you could clean the floor really, really well. Again, practical, extremely practical, very comfortable on the inside. And again, not pretentious at all. Beautiful. In my mind, it's a beautiful village. Well-proportioned, lovely rhythms, nice symmetries here and there, but all of that done quite inexpensively and quite accessibly and in a very egalitarian way. There's no one in this village that has the badass big house. And there's also no one in this village that has a little shack or shanty. There's a real kind of respect of everyone and a lack of pretension or distinction among somebody who might be elevating themselves vis-a-vis the others. One of my very favorite buildings in this village is this storage shed for wood. It's got all of those good humanistic values, very simple materials, just wood, but again, the stone elevating it above the moisture in the ground. There actually is a little gap there so the air can move under there. That means that you don't get too much rot of the wood. If the wood gets moist, as the moisture would be in the ground, then it'll begin to rot. So now it can ventilate down there and make sure there's no accumulated moisture. You also would get the wood when it starts to rot just a little bit, or it just stays for a little while, begins to oxidate. It would build up heat. That heat would rise through there. That would draw a breeze through and tend to ventilate all of the wood. And then that would be exhausted out of this heat stack that will allow the warm air to rise and go out there. So extremely practical, very just simple, good design. And again, coming out of these humanistic values. Now, the bottom line of all of this is that there is a way to design that is like that simple wine bottle, that is like freaking blue jeans, that is egalitarian, respects the dignity and worth of mankind, all people, that helps us with self-actualization, helps us to do what we want to do, and does it in a very kind of analytical, logical, simple, reasoned kind of way. Now, anytime we think of designing that way, that's good humanistic design. And in the next talk, we'll look at how that applies to more specific building design. See ya.